2, 1.
Thanks, Justin. I'd like to welcome everybody to the April 5th, 2022 Ashland Board of Health meeting. Just a disclaimer, this agenda is subject to change and includes those items reasonably anticipated by the chair to be discussed at the meeting. Not all agenda items may in fact be discussed, and other agenda items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. As always, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:04 p.m. And citizens participation. Mark, what do you got for us today?
Just saying, happy early spring to you all, and hope everything's going well. And just wanted to say that welcome back, Mr. Berman. Kind of not as busy, but now then again, you probably feel happier. Bringing back a little bit of hair back, I see. And to Mr. Ron, I kind of appreciate the social welcome you always give me to speak. So this is one of the most pleasant boards I get to speak on sometimes. The other ones kind of want to limit my time to understand what's going on. So as a citizen participation specialist, I'm just going to say thank you, town-wise, committee-wise, everybody-wise. And we have survived, and said in the, I think I just saw on my website, I think CNN website, that the country has hit the historic low on hospitalization and COVID so far. It's on the CNN website. They had a little bulletin, and let's be glad that can we go lower so it'll be gone. Everybody else, thank you, and have a good meeting.
Sorry, hang on one second, little volume issue here. Okay, KJ, you good?
Yes, sir, I'm very good. Congratulations,
Okay.
Ed, for your promotion there up in Waive.
Thank you. Not what I expected this quickly, but hopefully not for long also.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, iPad technical difficulties right now, but looks like we can move on to Ashland and the Sustainability Committee presentation regarding net zero resolution.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. And thank you to...
Yeah, thank you for coming
I
and presenting.
I appreciate you giving me the chance to do so. I will need the ability to share my screen. If someone can give that to me, is that possible?
Yeah, Laura can do that.
One moment. You should be all set.
I am. Thank you so much, Laura.
Okay, sure.
Thank you again for giving me the time. I will try and keep my comments brief so that there is some time for the Board of Health to also ask me questions. The purpose of me joining you today was to take you through a piece of work that the Sustainability Committee has been working on since about 2019. So in 19, we as a town had adopted a resolution to try and achieve net zero emissions by 2040. I will indicate that this is a more aggressive goal than the state has set for itself, but Ashland has typically been on the forefront. We're one of the early adopters of the Green Communities program, and we've traditionally taken fairly active steps to be pretty much on the forefront of actions that need to be taken for climate change or against climate change. In order for us to actually achieve the goal, the Sustainability Committee was tasked with a plan to try and to come up with a plan that will help us achieve this goal. And so what we chose to do was first take a step back and actually do an assessment of where greenhouse gas does come through in the town. And those findings were presented to the select board in July 2020. I'll give you a brief inkling into those. And we've then developed a plan based on the findings of that greenhouse gas inventory that I'd like to share with you. Before I get into the plan itself, I did want to maybe acknowledge, one of the reasons we wanted to make sure that we were talking to the Board of Health is because we see you as a key stakeholder in the work that we are doing. The net zero plan overall is going to require concerted effort by all stakeholders in the town. It's akin to a fairly significant initiative that the town would have to take strategically if we are to achieve this goal. And there are clear linkages between climate change, the burning of fossil fuels, and carbon emissions to resident health, to community health. And so we see you as being a key stakeholder and wanted to make sure that before we took this plan any further, that you were an active part of the review that we are going through. In addition, we have been taking this plan to other committees that we feel are important, including the planning board. We've talked to a number of citizen groups, and we will be having an open meeting on the 12th in the Ashland Library as well for residents to come and talk to us, to members of the Sustainability Committee, about the plan. And finally, in the upcoming town meeting, we do propose to put a resolution that's still being reviewed, but the resolution would really look for the town to adopt the strategies that we've developed here as at least a framework or a guiding post towards achieving this plan. So all that said, let's get into sort of what we did find and how we propose to address greenhouse gas emissions. So part of greenhouse gas inventory, it's fairly typical for a town of our size. We kind of have about 9 metric tons of carbon-2 emissions or equivalent emissions, including gases like methane, per person in town. And the emissions typically tend to be very focused on buildings, mainly residential buildings, but also commercial buildings and industry, and transportation. Again, not particularly surprising given the kind of businesses that we have in town, as well as us being mainly a residential community, a suburban community that typically tends to lean on lean on cars as our main mode of transportation. Our public transportation options are fairly limited apart from the commuter rail, which we are thrilled that we do have access to in Ashland. In order to try and achieve the goal, what we did was we then sort of took a fourfold approach that focuses on education, which includes things like the greenhouse gas inventory that allows us to set baselines. Using the education piece, really achieving some level of adaptation, whether it's in our own behavior, municipal behavior, or maybe influencing behavior at the state or federal level. That allows us to get to a certain spot, right? And those would include things like, just making changes that are within our control. But eventually we do see a need for significant municipal and personal capital investments to really change the playing field, which then leads to transformation. And the areas that we would need to make those kind of investments in are the pillars that we focused on, right? So it's really focused on our energy supply first and foremost. Obviously, we're looking at net zero carbon, so energy supply kind of becomes intrinsic to that, and then focusing on the spaces where we do get emissions from. So from our homes and buildings, our transportation, influencing and making smart policy decisions that would include work that boards like yourself do, and obviously influencing at the state and federal level policy decisions that are being made, and then expanding the kind of climate resiliency work that we already do in town. I think Ashland's again got a fairly good track record, but we really would need to expand that. And then what we have done is for each one of those pillars, identified specific strategies that the town would need to achieve with some level of a barometer. So I just want to kind of give you the format, right? Some level of a barometer by when we would need to achieve it to be able to get to our 2040 goal. A key element to the plan does focus on electrification as a primary strategy. So as you will see in the entirety of the plan, electrification is a recurring theme. And because electrification is so important, it is our belief that electricity is the only energy supply source today that has some path towards being renewable. Not that it is renewable today. Clearly there's a significant amount of electricity that's still produced using fossil fuel sources, but it is the only path that can get to effectively a renewable only source. But as we look at that and making that our primary assumption, right, we then start looking at how we actually then expand the use of electricity across the board, right? So first off, really taking the electricity we do get and pushing that towards more renewable sources. So we are fortunate to already have a good community aggregation program that sources renewable energy for us, but we'd like to see that shift towards more local sources of clean energy, and then really starting to eliminate the dependence on fossil fuel energy. Once we kind of tackle the supply side of this equation, then it becomes demand side. On the demand side, we really are looking at buildings and moving them towards electrification. And here again, there are significant known health benefits towards shifting towards electrification. So whether it's in the burning of fossil fuels like natural gas or coal for either heating or for cooking, there are a lot of emissions, even during just a cooking cycle, that there's particulate matter that's generated within the home, and especially with older homes, that shifting towards electricity effectively reduces that, reduces the amount of diseases like asthma or allergies that then result. So there's some pretty significant health benefits that come from electrification that we have tried to focus on. And with that goal, then we've now laid a roadmap towards how we can achieve electrification in buildings. So starting again with reporting and recognizing where energy use is happening, then leveraging existing programs like MassSave, but also creating programs like we did more recently with a heat challenge, solar and heat challenge that was ongoing in town till really last week. It ended on 31st March. So some of those rates are still available to residents all the way, I think, into April. And then at some stage, we would want to require electrification of new buildings, but we don't believe that that's something we should do alone as a town. So, which is why we introduced the resolution in last town meeting, pushing for the state to actually adopt that as a policy. And then adopting net zero building policies and codes. Again, there'd be a lot of state engagement. And I think, again, Ashland's got a good track record of having municipal buildings lead by example. I'd like to see that expand. And if you'll just bear with me, I'll just get through this and then I'll pause for questions. And I would like to kind of give you a glimpse into, the level of detail we have taken this into sort of a summary level. On the transportation side, again, we are advocating for walking and biking. Those are harder in Massachusetts, especially in the Northeast with the weather patterns we have. But again, we do believe that walking is the most effective way of reducing fossil fuel emissions. It's healthy. Biking, same thing, but then also expanding towards more public transportation options and investigating those. We do believe that a shift towards an electric infrastructure for vehicles is important. I personally drive an electric vehicle. I've been driving an electric vehicle for about 10 years now. But even if you were to ask me 5 years back how likely it was that we'd be going towards 100% conversion, I probably would be hesitant. But today we do know that most major car companies have committed to basically electrify their entire fleets by 2030 in some cases, or 2040 in some cases. So I think we're very well on that path, and the feasibility of that feels far more likely at this stage. But again, we would want to see the municipality take the lead on it. So as we start investigating a new contract for our school buses, for example, we believe that's a great candidate for us to maybe take that electric, as they really fit that use case very, very well. And then we've been working with the board, with the planning board, to really start looking at how we might be able to take individual actions in town on things like zoning or policy changes we might be able to do. But we've also obviously started to advocate for adoption of state level net zero codes and the creation of broader state level net zero codes. Finally, we are working with Michael to start thinking about how we can incorporate this into strategic town planning as well. On the last point, which actually is probably the largest point in some ways, but we felt like most people do understand this. It's really shifting our culture towards adopting a net zero waste mindset, so that we're really doing a lot more reuse, a lot more recycling, and really not, our consumption patterns are effectively shifting, so that there's a lot of material that we're starting to put together to educate residents on how they can do that for themselves, but also for businesses in town on how to start thinking about zero waste. And then really expanding some of the natural assets we already have in town, and preserving and protecting them. We do propose to put forward a tree bylaw. Again, that's something that's going to need a lot of engagement with builders and other stakeholders. But we're hopeful that that's something we'll be able to push forward and be able to preserve some of the rich natural resources we have in town. Finally, obviously, we have to continuously invest in equitable climate resilient projects and make those, again, part of strategic town planning, right? Those can't be individual one-offs on their own. So pause there. I just gave you a lot. Before I completely pause, I'm just going to flash up some of the detail that we have built into the plan. So just taking, like, let's say the electricity supply section, right? We've now taken each one of those line items and called out individual strategies that we will need to work through with the town. I personally don't think that we've necessarily achieved a true plan in this iteration of what we've done, which is why I called it a strategy up front. As part of the resolution, we are working with Michael to try and figure out what's the right way for us to govern and steer the implementation of something like this, because I do believe that as we look forward and take this to the next level, we're going to need a lot more engagement. So right now, the Sustainability Committee is by and large sort of worked through best practices to come up with this proposal. I think as we get into actual implementation, we're going to need active engagement from boards like yourself, from other stakeholders, to really make these policies real, but also to educate us towards a path of practicality as well. So we believe the Sustainability Committee will continue to hold a little bit more of a moral compass on being idealistic on what we need to achieve, but then that needs to be balanced by the realities of both town budget and appetite. Though I think it is our job pushing the envelope forward. So pause there, see if you have questions. Happy to take this to any level of detail that you would like me to.
That was a terrific overview of that. What a lot of work that is, and certainly makes a lot of sense. That's for sure. Anybody with any questions?
I have a question, a couple of questions,
Sure.
I should say. Thank you, Ratan, for bringing the topic here. One question is that I know that the new buildings, you want them to be adopting the new technologies and things like that to have achieve this goal. But is there a significant cost difference in changing from the old method to the new method to achieve this goal? One. The second, you also mentioned about the tree bylaw that you're going to come up with it. And the trees and solar panels don't go easily one against the other. So how would you protect the solar panels from protecting the tree, and how do you protect the trees from the solar panels?
It's actually not that hard, KG, but thank you for both those questions. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to sort of talk about how that electric transition would look like. So you're right, transitioning existing homes towards something like ground source heat pumps is expensive. There is no question about it. There's a material investment required for transitioning existing homes, which is why one of the first things that we're looking to do is really push for electrification of new homes. So the requirement we would like to see is start with the electrification of new buildings. The reason for that is if you look at the economics of building some of these technologies into new buildings, the cost profile is actually quite similar. Both ground source and air source heat pumps are when you're trying to put them into an existing building, they become equitable. You do have to look at the ROI on a slightly expanded time scale. So if you were to just look at it as a straight, cost to build metric, right, then it is higher. But if you look at the cost to own metric, which just over 3 or 4 years, you start to actually see that even out. And in fact, post 4 or 5 years, in most of these cases, you actually see a net benefit to the resident, right? So you actually start ending up saving money rather than, because you're not really spending the same kind of money. Secondly, net zero homes tend also to be far more efficient in the way they use energy, but they also tend to be healthier in terms of, because they tend to have a higher ventilation needs. It's just built tighter, right? So there's a lot of benefits that go with it. When it comes to existing homes, this is where I think we do need to advocate very extensively with the state to really make that transition feasible, especially for people in maybe in economically challenged, position, because, and the good news is we've seen some one major significant shift, right? So when we were doing the Metro West Solar Challenge, I personally, have natural gas in my house. And I was looking at doing ground source heat pumps because my house is now coming to the point where it's about 12 years or so, right? So at about 15 years, you'd start looking at shifting some of these systems anyway. So that's the ideal time to do it. And at that time, for natural gas owners, right, you didn't have as significant of a state rebate. As of the end of last month, now for ground source heat pumps, the state actually bumps in about almost 15K in additional investment. So at that stage now, it does start becoming closer. It's still an investment. Someone like myself can afford it. So it's possible that someone, who's not quite at the same level of economic independence may not be able to, right? So there's still a gap there, which is why we also start looking at things like, again, solar panels, I think at this stage have become sort of almost normalized, right? So those within 4 to 5 years, I think I spoke with Roger just day before yesterday, 5 years, you're going to see a return on investment straight off, right? So it's when you're shifting the heating sources, that's when it is a little bit more expensive, but air source is cheaper, and that technology has improved as well. On your second point of, solar versus trees, we actually think that there's actually a significant amount of pent-up capacity availability in Ashland, right? So just single-family homes, covering roofs with solar panels is a massive, massive opportunity right there. And in a lot of those cases, trees, while orientation and trees do play a role, right? There are ways for us to mitigate that. The panels themselves, when I first put my first set of panels in almost 14, 15 years back, were not as efficient. Now, even in a location that's not quite ideal, you're able to get quite a bit of generation, from your panel. So I think just the optionality has improved. So those two things can coexist. And the tree bylaw doesn't necessarily suggest that you cannot cut trees, that you cannot move trees. Clearly, if you're going to do building in town, you're going to have some of those trees to be cut. What it requires is that you then replace, right? So I think there are ways to balance that out as well, Kiji.
Thank you. I hope that I will be the first one to part of this goal in a couple of years. I'm planning to build one in Ashland.
I would love it. I would love it.
That's why I asked you about these questions.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Ashwin,
right.
I don't want to have you answer this if you don't have to. How net zero compliant is the new safety building that's going up? Has that been spoken about, or was that planned for?
Yeah, so actually, we're quite proud of the work that both the committee that was focused on public safety building did, as well as engagement from the sustainability committee. In the initial planning of that project, I think there were some significant areas where we had major concern. Matt, Marquis, Rob, Chuck, from the committee worked with other members who were planning that building out, and they were very gracious about taking our feedback in and replanning it. At this stage, while it's not going to be completely net zero, I think it's net zero ready and certainly headed in the right direction. I wouldn't be able to forecast the specific numbers, but I think they chose the option of going with ground source heat as a beginning. So we were thrilled about that, because that's one of the larger. In fact, we had a conversation with Framingham as well as with Natick, and they have never been able to put a ground source based public building out there. So they are a little jealous. Members in sustainability are jealous of us. We also one of the first communities to actually have parking lots covered with solar panels in the high school. We would love to see that expand. And then I have to shout out to the folks that were planning at the middle school, they took sustainability into account upfront, right? So they sort of had that built into their planning process. What we have been talking to Michael about is any significant project, and I think this is going to be a requirement. This is where I was talking about that steering group, right? Any significant project in town has to make sustainability a core component. We're not suggesting that it's the only component, but
Right.
just like we do any other activity, right? This needs to be one of those activities that it has to sort of account for it. I think that probably applies to any strategic plan going forward, has to account for sustainability and the net zero plan. And that would be the main purpose of the resolution that we'd like to see passed as well.
I have one more question.
Yes, KG.
The question is, do you have any resources posted on your website about the contractors who would do these things or who have already worked in public space in Ashland that we know of, so one could contact them and then get more info?
So actually, the whole point of the Metro West Solar and Heat Challenge was to actually simplify that process, right? So what we did was we worked with Natick, Framingham, Holliston, ourselves, and we actually identified contractors that did both air source, ground source, as well as solar. We pre-negotiated a lower rate profile with each of them as well, and we also have an audit process so for the work they do. And the idea there was, especially when you kind of get into ground source, those are complex technologies. Like solar has become a little bit more normalized, but even there's still lots of questions. So we do have links to that on the sustainability page in town.
Okay.
That program has ended, but what we are planning to do is we are working with Jill and other members, like the same communities, to actually start developing resources that will become more richly available. And so we'll continue to keep that resource, relevant and rich going forward.
Thank you. I'll probably talk to you afterwards anyway. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Totally.
Ashland, thanks very much for that. We appreciate it. Any other members with any other questions? No? Okay.
All right. Thank you again for giving me the chance.
I'll do if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just put my hand down here. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all your efforts, because this is definitely something that is not in my vocabulary, I'll say. I don't have the knowledge base. It's not necessarily something I'm looking for a comment about. I just want to tell you that, I am very passionate about working for municipal government, and I've expressed my concerns in the past about how this resolution went to the special town meeting and not to the annual town meeting. And I am understanding more and more how important it is to Sustainability Committee, but I was displeasured for the fact that it was at the special town meeting and not at the annual, which I think I would probably say 99% of large articles like that are at the annual town meeting. I'm trying to educate myself on it, but I think in the future that if you're going to do something that's this important to the community as a whole, I would just respectfully ask that it goes to the annual town meeting where a lot more people can be educated ahead of time. Because again, I'm trying to bring myself up to speed now after the fact when it's already gone through town meeting. Town meeting obviously is a powerful form of government. I think we all just need the right information ahead of time to make the decisions. I don't know that I'm going to be here in Ashland in 2040. I mean, I have, like I said, this is not in my wheelhouse, but I appreciate your efforts.
Dan, I think that is very valid feedback. I do want to note that we chose not to put the plan or the adoption of the plan in special town meeting for exactly that reason, because we felt it was much too big a topic and wasn't relevant to special town meeting, which is why we're shooting for the annual town meeting for this resolution. The resolution that we did put in special town meeting was really time sensitive because the state actually had, so all it did was effectively push the state to focus on the net zero work that they were doing, and it didn't require anything specific from the town apart from indicating that we've already passed this and that they need to do work. So when we spoke to both the select board and to the moderator, it was felt like, okay, given the narrow focus of that and the fact that we weren't committing specifically to anything apart from sending a letter, that it was actually appropriate. But I think your feedback is very, very valid, and I will make sure that we're keeping that in mind, for any future endeavors that we put out there. So thank you again for the support as well and the feedback. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, lovely.
All right.
I'll let you
Yeah,
have
thanks
your
very
time
much.
back. And I'll just make one last shout out, for anyone who's watching, if you can make it, on April 12th, we'll be hosting an open forum for all residents at the library. Thanks again, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. Hey, Barbara, how are you? Moving on to agenda item number 4, lanterns at Warren Woods Pool, request for waiver from the lifeguard requirement. We're probably a few minutes late for that. Laura, was nice enough to at least send the snippet of, kind of the variance request from last year. I do remember this very small pool and a 55 and older community that, really didn't want the restrictions of having to have a lifeguard. So apparently there were no issues. Anybody, have any concerns with granting this again?
Stacy's just coming on right now. She was off. Now she's coming back.
Okay.
She's from
if she's not able to get on, my name's Ed Corey. I'm on the board of directors at the Lanterns. I can help if anybody has a question. I think.
Just from the history of being on the board, I mean, I know that this has gone through the previous boards because this is a privately owned community. I know I don't see any reason if they're going to take the responsibility for themselves to be using a pool that doesn't have a lifeguard. I think more so, I think I would like the board to discuss. I think, I think it's a no-brainer that we give it again, but I just think we should talk about the waiver period. We've been doing it annually and they're requesting a 5-year period. I don't know if the board members want to also entertain extending it longer than a year. Again, it's a privately owned community, so I don't understand. We could probably extend it longer than a year.
Right. I agree with that, Diane.
Yeah, I agree as well.
I mean, I think we could at least, out of a courtesy, to do a 2-year period, just to kind of keep it in the comfort zone, and then, see how it goes. And I'm sure we're not going to have any issues. And then at that point, maybe we can, revisit it and maybe extend it for another 3 years.
Yeah.
Raj, you have any concerns?
No, sir. I've been in the pool last year, so I'm totally comfortable, small pool, only 4 feet, not a huge load, so should be totally fine.
Okay. Ed, yeah,
Appreciate
anything that you want to add?
No, I appreciate all you guys' help. The 2-year waiver is great, and then we'll just 2 years we'll talk again and see what we can do.
Okay, if you want, Ron, I can.
Let's make it official. Anybody want to make a motion?
Okay.
I can make a motion. Let's see. Is green management the proper title?
No, so we actually changed property managers, and that's why I'm on the call, because it was only April 1st. Stacy works for our
I'm here, Ed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's great. No, I made it through. So it's first service residential.
Okay, and does it just for my career? Does it change? Could it possibly change in the next 2 years? Should we just give it to the Lanterns versus a management company?
The first service contract is 3 years, so I think it's fine to give it to them.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to waive the lifeguard requirement from, what was it, something? What's the company again?
First service.
First service, thank you. For a 2-year period.
Thank you. Anybody like to second that?
I'll second it.
Great. All in favor? Aye.
Diane, aye.
Hi, Barbara.
And Barbara. Okay, that passes 4-0. All right. Thank you. See you again in a couple of years.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Have
great.
a good night.
Take care.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 5, Mary Mortensen Annual Public Health Award. Discuss nominees. I know that, we had a little bit of information, regarding the concept, which was nice enough to be, placed into the paperwork for the meeting. This was to, this was established in 2018 for the Board of Health to honor a citizen organization for efforts concerning public health, and named after and honoring Mary Mortensen, who had a huge role in the Ashland Board of Health and being a nurse for a number of years, as Diane has, let us know, as well as, a lot of us know anyway, with an awesome list of accomplishments that, it would take me an hour to read on this next, piece of paper. But Diane, do you have anything, that you'd like to add, regarding her contributions and what she meant to the town?
Well, I think I said at a previous meeting, Mary would have thrived over COVID because she was always willing to give back to her people and think of them before herself. She would have been right there in the front lines with everybody doing the vaccination clinics and running around and doing everything she possibly could to get our community, as well as our surrounding communities, vaccinated. So, I think it's a hard time to be giving an award because things have been a little difficult for everybody the last couple of years. I know obviously Jay can't be here tonight. I, myself have thought, we of course have recognized a couple of people and organizations the last couple of years. And I didn't know if this year the board felt it appropriate to nominate our Ashland Police and our Ashland Fire Department for their services through the COVID-19. Specifically, of course, them responding to people's homes to care for them at home and bring them to the hospital, but as well as stepping up and helping Sergeant Berman, or Chief Berman now, but Sergeant Berman was doing vaccination clinics, going to residents' homes to make sure that they were vaccinated, and again, working together as a community. That is what my nomination would be.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Diane. And I know from, from Ed speaking and talking to Ed as well, that, another person who had a major role would be one of the school nurses, Audrey LaCroix. So that could be another one. So I'd like to at least get that out on the floor and, give that a nomination as well. Bernadette or Barbara?
I'm thinking of the fire department and the police.
Okay.
Do you want
Barbara?
to take the nominations and then just to make I hate to keep putting it off, but just because Jay's not here, I didn't know if you wanted to take any of the nominations and then we can make a decision at the next meeting when Jay's here.
Sure. I guess it really doesn't matter exactly when we, give it. Okay, so that's great. Does anybody else have any potential nominations? So
No.
We'll just, no? Okay. So we'll just review this next time, with Jay, so we can have the police and fire and Audrey LaCroix and, take a little bit of talk about it next time and give a vote, and that'd be great. We can,
Sure.
Present it, the first or second meeting in May. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 6, discussing our own meeting format. So this, I actually had a question on this. I wasn't quite sure. Does that mean whether or not we're going to get back into personal meetings? Is that what that was about, Laura?
Correct. I know we had
Yeah.
talked about either in person or virtual or hybrid. So I just kind of generically put
Good.
format.
Okay. I think that most people were, we could do the hybrid, or, I think everybody was amenable to continuing on with, doing virtual meetings as well. I kind of remember that is,
I think it's July.
That
10th.
sounds reasonable. Anybody really want to get back in and do them, or, this format is fine, at least for me. Bernadette, you have any thoughts?
I'm comfortable with the current format.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barbara? If you're talking,
I'm
you're
fine
on
with
mute.
that.
So you like the virtual as well? You're good with
Correct.
that, Guy?
Yeah, I'm good with the virtual. I mean, we can do it up until July 15th. So, I mean, I think if
Yeah.
we could take advantage of that, just, that is
Okay.
fine.
All right. No, I'm good with it. So we may as well, put it on, put it on a later meeting just to review it again, Laura, before, I guess, sometime before July 15th, just to make sure, or if it's going to be a town-wide thing that, we're all supposed to be back in person after that, then I'm sure we'll all just know that, and it won't really need to be on a meeting.
Right.
So, all right. So we'll keep it virtual. So the consent agenda is the next item for both review and approval of the Board of Health meeting minutes for March 15th, 2022, the year-to-date budget reports fiscal year 2022. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined?
I'd like to move the motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined, right?
Okay, great. Anybody like to second that?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Diane,
Aye.
aye.
All right,
Hi, Barbara.
okay. Bernadette? Okay, I think that passes 4 to nothing. So that's good. We have, we'll skip John's agenda item, the remote area medical, since he's not here, but we'll keep that on for next time. He'll probably have an update. And Raj, we're on you for number 9, Health Director's agenda.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. With COVID, in between 3/18 to 4/1, we had total of 38 confirmed cases. Past couple of weeks, the numbers was up. We were seeing some cases. It can be because of the mask being taken off. Again, these are not true numbers. Because these are just PCR tests that's coming through. Some people are doing the rapid test. Maybe they probably might be reporting. So, but numbers was kind of up past couple of weeks. But this week, what we are seeing, we are not seeing too many cases. So that's a good news. Other than that, the second booster is approved. Hopkinton is actually doing a clinic tomorrow for it. If somebody needs that, I guess I talked to their public health nurse, Simone, and they still had some slots. And we will also be trying to put up a clinic, for this 50+ Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, given if we get the demand, and we'll work with the Metro West Share Services to put it together with them, or probably maybe for Ashland itself. We still have rapid test kits for the residents. If he needs it, please come to the health office or our manager's office, and they are available at the community center as well. My second item, we are starting the childhood vaccine clinic tomorrow. I would like to thank everybody, board members, the management for the huge support in this. 4 kids, 4 Ashland kids are registered to get their vaccines tomorrow. We'll be starting the clinic at 2 p.m. It's going to go till 6. Hopefully, Chief Berman will join us tomorrow, given, if he's available. He huge support with this clinic. the clinic is doing good. We are picking more and more members, who are getting their PP checked every week. Jessica from our share services, she's doing a tremendous job, both with this, and she's going to be taking care of our childhood vaccine clinic as well. My next item, the kitchen at the middle school. We got their plan, like almost a month and a half back. We have reviewed it. There were some items, that we need it to be addressed. The team has come up with solutions. We are almost at the final stage of approval for the kitchen at the new middle school. We have picked up a couple of housing cases, just general stuff, and then I know I was supposed to update the board last time about the cleanup Ashland. We had a very good meeting a couple of weeks back. We have looked into like the litter situation that we are seeing, some litter situations around the middle school, the state park, and the cleanup committee have promised us, like, they'll be addressing it. They were going to give these specific areas to volunteers who can over the year they can take care of it. So that was a good meeting. And other than that, I know, Mr. Chair, you have asked me last time. I'm not exactly sure when the date is, but Dell, they are doing a cleanup on Route 126 before the marathon. It seems they're going to be like 35 of their volunteers going to be doing a cleanup around the route. Boston Marathon, I know two of my board members, Dr. J as well as Bernadette, have shown interest to be there. I appreciate the support. I have 4 of the volunteers coming from the Red Cross, and one of our MRC member, who was there last year as well. She's going to probably be there for the marathon. My last item is the mental health workshop. Jennifer Wolfing at the community center, she's putting up a workshop at the community center in May. I guess it's 3rd week of May. And we're going to have a Board of Health table at the fair. Dr. J is doing some work on that, as well as Jessica, myself, we'll be presenting maybe a poster. We have not finalized on what we're going to be doing, some educational material there and all that stuff. And I'll keep the board posted probably next week, next meeting, what we're going to be doing. I guess that's all I have, if I'm open to any questions, please.
Okay, thank you much.
Just an information for the board. I think I met Jean Walker last week at her house. I was just parking there, and she tells me that the Green Up Ashland will do their job on the 1st week of May. I think it's usually Sunday or so.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, KJ. All right. Looks like anybody have anything that they add to review for the next meeting, which will be 2 weeks from now on the the 12th, the 19th. Nope. Okay. So as far as the the election and a new board, that would be the elections are, I'm sorry, when exactly? Is it the first Tuesday Tuesday in May?
Until May 17th.
Yeah.
It's May. Oh, it's not till May 17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a meeting, I think the 3rd.
The 3rd. Okay. Was their last one die?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, Laura always does a great job of filling up the agenda. So if there's anything anybody wants to add, please let her know, or somebody on the board can get a hold of her. And that's it. Anything else? Nobody? Okay. Anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. A second?
I second it.
Okay, thanks, Bernadette. All in favor? Aye.
And I.
Right,
Hi, Barbara.
okay. All right, that passes. All right, everybody, thanks. Raj, thanks. Laura, thanks. All the
Thank you,
board
sir.
members,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
everybody.
KG.
Bye. Have a good night.
Yep.
Good
See
night.
you in a few weeks.
Good
All
night.
right, good night.
Good night.
adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. A second?
I second it.
Okay, thanks, Bernadette. All in favor? Aye.
And I.
Right,
Hi, Barbara.
okay. All right, that passes. All right, everybody, thanks. Raj, thanks. Laura, thanks. All the
Thank you,
board
sir.
members,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
everybody.
KG,
Bye. Have a good night.
Good
see
night.
you in a few weeks.
Good
All
night.
right, good night.
Good night.